Hi guys, and welcome to All Things English with me, Teacher Leo. Today I'm going to show you the difference between the past continuous tense and the past perfect continuous tense. Knowing exactly how and when to use these two tenses will make you a better communicator, being able to relay information about the past as accurately as possible. And having a good command of these two tenses will make you better at narration. In other words, storytelling, which is essential when it comes to overall fluency in any language. And some of us don't realize this, but we actually tell each other stories every day. For example, when we sit down at the dinner table and we ask each other about how our days went, right? Or during coffee break at work when we gather around and talk about the latest news and current events. And when we update the boss about the latest happenings about the recent project. And I almost forgot to mention, from now on, I'll be giving you guys exercises and quizzes at the end of each lesson to encourage you to watch the lesson from start to finish, because I structure my lessons in a way that begin with the fundamentals and slowly build up to a point where you can say, oh, so that's how I got here, and now I understand, right? Are you guys ready to begin? Okay, let's do this. I was studying, or I had been studying. What is the difference? The first sentence is in the past continuous tense, and the second sentence is in the past perfect continuous tense. Now you're probably thinking, okay, I knew that, but what is the difference? Do both sentences express the same meaning? My answer is, let's find out, but let's do it step by step. Let's begin with the past continuous tense. We form this tense by combining was or were with the present participle of a verb. That's the verb in its ing form. To make it simple, just remember the sentence pattern: subject plus was or were plus verb ing. For negative sentences, we insert not between the helping verb and the main verb. For questions, we just simply exchange the subject and the helping verb. Let's take a look at some examples. I was teaching. He was studying. We were dancing. They were singing. If you noticed, all the pictures clearly show actions that were continuing or were in progress when the pictures were taken. And that's because we use the past continuous tense when we want to talk about an action that was in progress at a specific moment in the past. Let's take a look at some dialogues that'll show you how this tense is used in everyday conversation. Where were you yesterday? I didn't see you in class. Oh, I was at the dentist. I was having my tooth pulled. What were you doing last night? I called several times, but you never picked up. Oh, I'm so sorry. I was watching the game. The past continuous is also very frequently used simultaneously with the past simple tense to talk about two past actions that took place at the same time, when one action was in progress, when the other action interrupted it. Let's take a look at the example we saw earlier. I watched the game and you called. These are the two actions that happened last night. So, the longer continuous action should be expressed in the past continuous tense. And the shorter action that interrupts it should be expressed in the past simple tense. So we can say, I was watching the game last night when you called. Here's another example. I was sleeping when the earthquake happened early this morning. So I didn't feel a thing, but I heard it was pretty strong. Now let's take a look at the past perfect continuous tense. If we examine the name of this verb tense, we can see that it's telling us how to use it. This verb tense refers to an action or state that happened before now. Generally speaking, perfect verb tenses refer to completed actions. Continuous verb tenses refer to actions or states that continued over a period of time and are or were in progress. So, putting it all together, the past perfect continuous tense refers to an action that happened in the past, continued for a period of time, and then ended in the past as well. How do we form the past perfect continuous? You can check the table for the details, but once again, to make it simple, just remember the sentence pattern: subject plus had been plus verb ing. Using contractions with a past perfect continuous. When we use the past perfect continuous, especially in speaking, we very often, if not always, contract the subject and the first helping verb. We also do this in informal writing, like when we send a text message. So, I had been becomes I'd been. You had been becomes you'd been, and so on. Let's take a look at some examples. She'd been cooking. He'd been teaching. She'd been listening. He'd been traveling. Now, if you noticed, all the pictures denote continuous actions that started and ended before the pictures were taken. And that's because we use the past perfect continuous mainly to talk about past actions which began, then continued up to a point, and then ended before another past action that we want to talk about. For example, when I met Susie yesterday, I could tell that she'd been crying. Her cheeks were dry, but her eyes were all red and puffy. This sentence tells us that yesterday I met Susie. Before we met, sometime in the past, she started to cry, and she continued crying up to a certain point and stopped. Then we met. Here's another example. I could immediately tell that someone had been smoking in the car when I entered. This is another sentence that makes it very clear that we can only use the past perfect continuous to express the content accurately and correctly. Because if we use the past continuous and say, I could tell that someone was smoking when I entered the car, this changes the meaning of the sentence completely. So far, I think the differences between the past continuous and the past perfect continuous are pretty clear, right? Okay, but now take a look at these sentences. It was snowing when I left the house. It had been snowing when I left the house. The first sentence tells you that when I opened the door and stepped outside the house, there was snow falling from the sky. It was snowing at the exact moment that I left the house. The second sentence tells you that when I opened the door and stepped outside the house, I could tell that it had been snowing, but it stopped because there were no snowflakes falling from the sky at the moment I stepped out. But of course, the ground was white and covered in snow because it had been snowing previously. Now let's take a look at these two sentences. It was snowing when I left the house. It had been snowing for 2 hours when I left the house. This is where it gets tricky, so please listen carefully. The thing is, both the past continuous tense and the past perfect continuous tense can be used to talk about actions that were in progress at a certain point in time in the past. So now you're probably thinking, okay, everything was pretty clear up until this point. Now I'm confused. So what's the difference? Simply put, the difference is, while the past continuous tense merely shows continuity, the past perfect continuous tense shows continuity and puts an emphasis on duration. So we use the past perfect continuous when we want to indicate the duration of a past action in progress. Let's take a look at the timeline to make things clearer. So, 2 hours before I left the house, it started to snow. It continued to snow, and when I left the house, it was still snowing. So I hope things are all clear now. Now it's time for the moment that you've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. I was studying, or I had been studying. What is the difference? The answer is both phrases are grammatically correct. Yes. So it really depends on what information you want to relate. For example, I was studying is in the past continuous tense and can be used when a continuous action was continuing, then was interrupted by another action in the past. I was studying when she arrived. I had been studying is in the past perfect continuous and can be used when an action began in the past, continued for some time, and ended before another action happened. I'd been studying when you arrived. We can also use the past perfect continuous to talk about the cause of a certain situation or the reason behind a situation. So for example, you can say, I'd been studying when you arrived. That's why my books are all over the place. So basically what this tells us is, when you arrived, you saw that my books were all over the place because previously I'd been studying. Okay, so I hope everything is all clear, and now you know the differences and the similarities between both tenses. And now I want you to take a look at this dialogue to see both tenses in action in everyday conversation. Tim tells his mom that he's going to a friend's house. But his mom realizes something. Tim, have you studied for your exam tomorrow? Yes, I have. Didn't you just see me studying when you... Oh yeah, I remember. I did see you studying when I arrived from work. I'm sorry. And I'd already been studying for several hours when you did, okay? So just relax. Now it's time for a quiz to see if you've truly understood the lesson. Okay, so I guess that's it for now. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson, and more importantly, I hope you learned something new. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more lesson videos like this one every week, and click that like button if you enjoyed this particular lesson, because that tells the YouTube algorithm to spread this video to more ESL learners just like yourself. Okay, so have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.